Day and night and day, the living creatures give their praise. To him who lives eternally, they never cease from saying, Holy, holy is Yahweh Almighty, worthy, worthy to receive all glory.
Well, hello. Welcome to Walking in the Word, the Heart of the Tribe platform. So glad you came to join me today. Whether you're watching live or whether you watch in the future, I hope that this message is a huge blessing to your life and it brings some revelation and understanding. We're going to be talking about the book of Hosea today, and it is very appropriate for the world that we are living in today. I do want to say hello to my sweetheart. Good morning, honey. He is here watching, my husband, Robert. So good to have you here with me as I present. So I'm going to go ahead and add my PowerPoint to the stream. We're talking about the book of Hosea. So I've got it here. Poor Hosea was between the rock, who is Yahusha himself, and Yahweh, and his message, and a very hard message, right? He had just something just so pressing on his heart. Okay, and this was a message. We're still dealing with the prophets that were ministering to the northern kingdom that were about to be just absolutely decimated by Assyria. And it's very interesting when you read the world history. Many of them could see the writing on the wall, and many of them absolutely got on ships and left, and many of them went by ended up in Spain. And there's just a lot of really good history of what happened. And how many of them escaped beforehand because they knew what was about to be happening in their country. All right, so let me get started. So Hosea is an 8th century prophet. His name literally means salvation. It's the family name of Joshua. The primitive root word is yasha. It means to be saved or delivered. So what a great name Hosea has. He is a contemporary prophet of Amos, Isaiah, and Micah. All of them ministered during the reign of the following kings of Judah. Uzziah was a king of Judah at that time, Jotham, Ahaz, and King Hezekiah. From the northern kingdom, his homeland, the king of Ephraim, was Jeroboam II. Okay. Good morning, Deborah John. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. There were several other kings, but they really just list Jeroboam II in the scriptures, maybe because it was just in such constant warfare and getting ready to stop that it didn't even matter who the king was, because they'd lost, as we saw when we looked through Amos, they had lost all influence. The kings no longer, it had almost become a joke to them, the political arena. So they went to other leaders, tribal leaders, for a lot of decisions. Okay, so his ministry lasted approximately 40 years. It's a very long time for a prophet with a very unpopular message. All right, so I did find this very interesting. It's out of the book, An Introduction to the Old Testament and its Study by Robert L. Cate. And so I just wanted to read this to you. It says, Hosea, unlike Amos, was not considered an outsider, since his message was for the northern kingdom. He apparently felt more deeply than Amos the personal tragedies which were about to befall his people and his beloved land. The book of Hosea has well been called the Gospel of John in the Old Testament, for his theme is quite similar, the unswerving love of God. Hosea has also been called the first evangelist of the Old Testament, seeking to lead people to respond to that overwhelming love. The book of Hosea has the most corrupt text of any Old Testament book. There are many differences between the Hebrew text and that of the Septuagint. Further, recent manuscript discoveries have only confirmed the problems in the text. However, even though the corruptions in Hosea give countless difficulties in translation, they do not affect our understanding of the basic message of the book. Furthermore, the book is very difficult to outline. No logical development appears to exist between the various messages or oracles within the book. 2 suggestions have been made to explain this. Professor A.B. Davidson long ago described the contents of the book as a series of sobs torn from the heart of an agonized prophet. Obviously, one does not sob in a logical outline. Emotions are seldom logical. On the other hand, it has also been noted that normally we do not find a logical consistency of plan in the order of sermons any person preaches. Right? When you listen to someone who is anointed of the Father's constantly giving them, new revelation, and I want you to address this because he's hearing the cries of the people are coming into his ears and the prayers, and he's answering through his chosen vessels to answer some of those heart cries and questions. And that's why, I love it. The ones that I listen to, one of my favorites, Bill Cloud, he's always talking about, he prays over his audience. And I pray this for you guys, that you may hear Yah's message for you within whatever message that he's placed on my heart to bring forward. He may be speaking to you and answering, questions, not that I know anything about that, or your heart cries, but he has heard, right? And it's amazing how Yah works in that way. So they don't come in this logically, a logical consistency of plan in the order of sermons any person preaches. Rather, they are called forth as the situation and changing circumstances demand. What we may have is simply the collection of Hosea's sermons, in a sense, just as they were tossed into the file drawer. Again, our understanding of his basic themes is not hindered by our failure to find a tight structure within the book. However, in order to deal with his preaching in any consistent way, the interpreter is forced to deal with passages that are separated from one another in the book. Hosea was preaching after the decline of Israel had begun, and the effects of the rising empire of Assyria were being felt. This would place his ministry sometime after Amos. Okay. All right. So even less is known about Hosea as an individual than is known about Amos. Based upon various implications from Hosea's messages, some scholars have suggested that he was a priest, a professional prophet. Remember, we talked about that when we talked about Amos, how they had like a prophetic guild, and you had to go to the right school of the prophets to be a part of their guild, very much like today, right? Okay, so he was not. Some scholars have suggested that he was a priest, a professional prophet, that maybe he was part of that. I don't think so, or a member of Israel's upper classes. If any of these were true, he was also one whose conscience had been stabbed awake by the abuses of the group of which he was a part. However, we have no conclusive evidence for any of these suggestions. All that we know for certain is that he was an Israelite and was apparently a city dweller, since he appears to have been quite familiar with the affairs of both Samaria and Bethel. He was also quite aware of what was going on upon both the national and the international scene of the day. Hosea's knowledge of history and geography, as well as the religious traditions and rituals of his day, was quite extensive, far more that we would assume that the ordinary Israelites possessed, far more than we would assume that an ordinary Israelite possessed. Some insights can be gained by contrasting what we know of Amos and Hosea. Both were prophets to Israel, but Hosea was the native while Amos was the foreign missionary. Hosea was a man of deep emotions, preaching from the heart. Amos, on the other hand, seldom exposed his heart, revealing primarily his intellect and his deep convictions. Amos saw Israel's injustices and unrighteousness, but Hosea appears to have felt them as well. He suffered when his people suffered. Both men were fully dedicated to trying to lead Israel to repentance and a new relationship with Yahweh, turning away from the Baals. Amos saw God as the God of wrath and justice. Hosea saw God supremely as the Lord of love. To Hosea, all other aspects of God were subordinate to his overwhelming love. Hosea also saw God as feeling very deeply the sins of his people. For centuries, Christians have preached as if the only time God suffered for sin was at the cross. To this, the book of Hosea responds with a not so. For the prophet Hosea, God suffered for sin throughout all time. All right, so I really wanted to read that to you guys from the Introduction to the Old Testament, and it's studied by Robert L. Cate. I think that's a really great resource, and I've enjoyed going through it as I'm enjoying going through the series. I wanted to go ahead and say good morning, Oliver. Welcome. I'm so glad you were able to join. And Bethany, good morning. And Lisa, good morning. So good to have everyone here today. All right, I pray this is a blessing for you guys. All right, so now I'm off of reading through Dr. Cate's notes, and we'll read you some of my own study. So when we're talking about the heart matter, you know, one of the first things that we're looking at here is the breastplate on the Deborah. Nice to have you here. So glad that you're here too. Alrighty. The breastplate contains the stones for all 12 tribes. The history studies we've already covered show that the tribes have been scattered into the nations, right, at this point. But we're really going to go into that because at this point in the story, that's getting ready to happen, right? So, you know, this is always a picture to me of our great high priest, and that is Yahusha, to where those people, all of them, are right on his heart. He wears it right there on his heart. We are on his heart all the time. Hosea's heartbreak was the heartbreak of a husband for a discontent, foolish, and disloyal wife. It reflected our bridegroom Yahusha's heart for a discontent, foolish, and disloyal wife, who at this time had split herself into two separate groups, people groups, called Yehuda and Ephraim. Okay. So the very first chapter of Hosea promises the scattering into the nations, the people of Yasharel, and a day coming in which all 12 houses of Yasharel will be reunited and worship one king. Which tribe you belong to has absolutely zero to do with salvation, but it does speak to your prophetic destiny. I remember hearing Dr. Stephen Pidgeon speak that exact sentence one day, and I wrote it down and put it in my notes because I thought that really that's the important thing to grasp with it. You know, it doesn't matter whether, you have a single drop of Hebrew blood in your veins, if you have chosen to follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, you have come into covenant with him. And as long as you're willing to live by his rules, then and honor him as the supreme master, it means that you have walked into that covenantal relationship with him, right? And he knows which gate you're going to walk through in the new city of Jerusalem. He knows which tribal affiliation, if you happen to be chosen to be one who lives to have the wilderness experience as we all come back into the land. He knows which tribal group you should belong to. So which tribe you belong to has absolutely zero to do with salvation, but does speak to your prophetic destiny according to those tribal blessings in Genesis 48 and 49. All flesh, all humanity, red and yellow, black and white. I love that song, right? We are all precious in his sight. Okay, so we're exactly the same when it comes to the cleansing power of the blood of our Mashiach. Yahusha's blood cleanses all who come in repentance of sin and have a desire to be in covenantal relationship with the Most High, our El Elyon. So Bethany's commenting here. She said, I was moved to read the text, Faithful Elohiym to an unfaithful people. This truly portrays Yah is more than good. Absolutely, Bethany. Thank you for sharing that. It's very good to have you here with me today. All right, let me go to the next slide. All right, so out of the Sefer, John 10:16 says, and other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd, right? His sheep are scattered into all the nations, and he knows those who are his. He knows every heart. All right, so let's just look at something. Let's look at comparison at something here. What does the Torah say versus what the Talmud says on a specific issue? Leviticus 19:33 says, 33 and 34 says, and if a stranger sojourn with you in your land, you shall not vex him, but the stranger that dwells with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and you shall love him as yourself. Isn't that exactly what Yahusha said? And the second commandment is like the first, love your neighbor as yourself, right? So continuing on in Leviticus 19:34, but the stranger that dwells with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for ye were strangers in the land of Mitzrayim, and I am Yahuwah Elohim. Right? So he's saying you were all strangers when you were in Egypt. Well, that's what Mitzrayim is in the Hebrew language, right? So the Torah, we can see the Torah in Leviticus 19:33 and 34 clearly states that strangers are to be welcomed as long as they are willing to abide by the rules that Yahweh has set forth in the scriptures. All right. You don't get to come in and just act any way you want and change things to suit you. You have to, if you want to come in and be a part of Yah's family, well, then you start learning to do things Yah's way, right? He doesn't conform to us. We conform to him. Now, when you look at the teaching that is coming forth out of the Talmud, the oral Torah, which is what the religion of Judaism follows, and they say it supersedes scripture, right? So they do not support this belief. And that's why they've set up things like the Noahide laws and everything else. It doesn't matter to them that, you're not welcome. You may think you're going to be, if you try to make yourself Jewish, but you're not welcome. All right, so let's continue on in Hosea. Let's start here now that we have some background. Hosea chapter 1, we're reading verses 2 through 4. It says, the beginning of the word of Yahweh by Hosea. I'm reading out of the Sefer, so that means Hosea. Okay, Hosea is Hosea. The beginning of the word of Yahweh by Hosea. And Yahweh said to Hosea, go, take unto you a woman of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land has committed great whoredom, departing from Yahweh. Okay, so what are we made up of if not dust? And he took us from the land, right? From the dust of the earth, right? He's talking about his people. So he went and took Gemir, that's Gomer in many translations. Okay, so he went and took Gemir, the daughter of Divlaim, which conceived and bore him a son. And Yahweh said unto him, call his name Yisrael, and that's translated Jezreel in many translations, but it's Yezrael, right? Yezra and then El, right? For El, like as in El Elyon, all right? For yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Yisrael upon the house of Yahu, and that's Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Yasharel. So he's dealing with the northern kingdom, and he's saying, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to avenge the blood that Yehu spilt. Okay, so he's like, I am going to deal with this because he went too far. So what he's saying is this is referring back to the bloodthirsty glee taken by the wild man Jehu or Yahu, right? Who served as king of Israel. That story is found in 2 Kings, chapters 8 through chapter 10 is if you want to go back and review that story and what was going on there. And you can see what he did. He had a commandment, but he reveled in the bloodthirstiness, and he went really far with it. Okay. All right. So I wanted to look at this word Jezreel or Yisrael, right? And so I'm looking at this. And so we've got a yod, which, if we're trying to separate it out into roots, right? We've got a yod. So that's probably a prefix. And then we've got Zara, right? Which that's the word for seed. Okay. So we've got a hand with seed. And then we've got the word El, which we know is another name for God, for Yahweh, right? Many times just referred to as El. Okay, so we've got that right here. So we've got a hand and Zerah scattering the seed of El. Okay, so that's what Jezreel means. It's he's telling us this is a field that he decided to scatter seed in. El scattered his seed in this field. Very interesting. So the root word is Zerah, which means literally to sow seed or scatter seed. So that's what this place that's being dealt with in this story. So I wanted to look at this. Where is Yisrael, or the Jezreel Valley? This, this Zara, this Zerael. The best that I can do with my Southern Hebrew translation, because I'm not so good at translating it all the time, but I do like looking at the Hebrew. So much can be gleaned there. So what if we got here, we're looking here, we can see here is where the valley of Jezreel will be, right? It's right where it's at. Okay. Now, looking at it in this picture, you see it right here. We've got Megiddo is what's the closest thing. Here's Jezreel. Here's the valley of Jezreel. And then here is Megiddo, which is a mountain. Mount Carmel is here, and it's part of this huge mountain range, right? So it's the valley between the mountain range of Mount Tabor and Mount Carmel, right? And then you've got the lower Galilee. So it's an interesting place, and it gets more interesting as we continue to look. All right, so the Jezreel Valley is in the tribal allotments of Zebulun, Issachar, and Manasseh. To the west, we've got the Carmel mountain range. That's what we were just looking at. It's a large mountain range. To the north sits the lower Galilee. Okay. To the east is what's known as the Jordan Rift Valley. And then to the south would have been more mountains. It's the hill country of Naphtali, Asher, Zebulun, and Issachar. Okay. In Hebrew, the word for Megiddo, right, what we were just looking at on the map, it would be Har Megiddo. Okay, so that's the mountains of Megiddo. In Greek, it translates to Armageddon. All right, so right, bells and whistles should be going off, because this is a huge place of significance in Revelation, right? So Megiddo was a chief Canaanite city in ancient times. It is near the ancient city of Bashan, and we all know Og of Bashan. So this is a place that was just riddled with the giants, the offspring of the fallen Nephilim, right? That had to be ousted by Joshua and his mighty men. The battle of Deborah and Barak, when they had to fight the Canaanites, because the job was not completed by Joshua and his mighty men. So it went into the period of the Judges. So in Judges chapters 4 and 5, we see Deborah and Barak have a huge battle with the Canaanites in this area. Then further on in Judges, because that's the whole story of Judges, a good leader was in, they helped him for a while, then the people fell into sin again, and then another leader had to be raised up to deal with it, and they would gain victories, right? So then the next battle would have been Gideon and the Midianites, and that was in Judges 6 through 7. So all of this took place in the same area. Then King Josiah versus the Egyptians had a battle there in 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 29. And then Jehu massacred all the members and friends and associates of Omri's family, okay, which was then King Ahab and Jezebel and their descendants, so the whole house of Omri. Omri was huge in world political power. It really became known that their whole dynasty as the dynasty of Omri. And so you can see all that story in 2 Kings chapter 9. All right. So going on in Hosea, did I skip a? Let me make sure I didn't skip a slide there. I did skip a slide. All right. So we just talked about that. All right. So this is the slide we skipped. So I wanted to look at this in Revelation. And I've put us a little picture there. I'm not sure it's a great representation, but I wanted to start because we're dealing with the vials being poured out upon the earth, right? So Revelation 16, we're talking about a time of judgment that is yet to come. I'm reading verses 12 through 16 so we can see the significance of this place, Jezreel, okay, and Megiddo. So, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Parath, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the eastern sun might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean ruachoth, like frogs, come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the ruachoth of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of the great day of Yahweh Zavaot, right? The captain of the host of all the angel armies, Yahweh Zavaot. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watches and guards his garment. What garment is that? That wedding garment that we're to keep pure and white and without spot and without blemish, right? It's our heart, if you will, keeping our mind and heart and focus on him and pure and not defiled. Okay? That's what we have to. So behold, I come as a thief. He's saying, you're not going to know the day or hour. He's told us over and over, you're not going to know this. This is not, it's going to be a surprise. All right. Blessed is he that watches and guards his garment, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Ivri tongue, in the Hebrew tongue, Har, which is mountain, Megiddo. Okay, so I was reading out of the Sefer so that you can see it. When you read it out of the King James, it literally says Armageddon, right? But we're talking about what it's called in the Hebrew tongue. So I like it that the Sefer actually gave us the Hebrew word. Okay. So now let's look at Hosea 1, 6 through 7. And now I'm reading out of the New Living Translation. I'm doing it simply for ease of understanding. They do a great job with just presenting, giving us the story. You know, it's interesting when you're studying by the Hebrew method. Of course, there's the 4 different levels. You know, they call it they've given it an acronym called Padres, right? And it's the Pashat is the first level, and it just means the plain meaning, because we learn in layers, right? And sometimes it is the first layer we need to get down. We need to understand the story. You know, the story, it's just the plain meaning. It's like, here's the story, okay? And then we can progress through different layers of meaning in our study, because Yah is certainly capable of expressing more than one thought through his words. Okay. There's lots of levels here. And this is why, you know, he says it's the glory of the kings to search out a matter, right? To search things, to dig, because that's where the treasure is. But it's important before you just go on a digging excavation to get that Padres, that Pashat level, that story level, right? So that's what we're doing right now. We're trying to understand the story. So Hosea 1, 6 and 7 says, soon Gomer became pregnant again and gave birth to a daughter. And Yahweh said to Hosea, name your daughter Lo Ruhamah, not loved, for I will no longer show love to the people of Yasharel or forgive them. But I will show love to the people of Yehuda. I will free them from their enemies, but not with weapons and armies or horses and chariots, but by my power as Yahweh their Elohim. Well, boy, when you just look at that, it's not looking good for the northern 10 tribes. Let's keep reading. After Gomer had weaned Lo Ruhamah, not loved, she again became pregnant and gave birth to a second son. And Yahweh said, name him Lo Ami, not my people, for Israel's not my people, and I am not their Elohim. Okay, so let's keep going. We get to verse 10, and he says, yet, and here's the good news, yet The time will come when Yasharel's people will be like the sands of the seashore, too many to count, right? Innumerable. Then at the place where they were told, you are not my people. And where were they told this? The valley of Jezreel, underneath the shadow of Har Megiddo, right? It will be said to them, you are the children of the living Elohim, right? This is so important. Okay. So he tells them, I'm putting you away, right? I'm divorcing you. I'm done. And then he still gives them the promise, yet we're not done. Okay. So verse 11, then the people of Yehuda and Yasharel, both houses, two sticks, one tree, two branches, one tree, just like Ezekiel 37. Then the people of Yehuda and Yasharel will unite together. When they come back, right, to this wilderness place where Yah brings them together because of drawing them out of the nations, because of whatever's happening in the nations at that point, which I believe we're getting very close to, but maybe many generations have felt this way, but the evidence seems to me like it's all around us, but maybe we're supposed to feel that way. I don't know the time. But he says, then the people of Yehuda and Yasharel will unite together. They will choose one leader for themselves, and they will return from exile together. This has never happened. I don't care how you twist scripture, what theology you come up with. This has not happened yet, but it will. What a day that will be. The day of Jezreel, when Elohim will again plant, right? Scatter that seed, sow the seed, his people in his land. In that day, you will call your brothers Ami, which means my people. It means all 12 tribes will be saying to one another, Ami, we are the same people. Right? My people. And you will call your sisters Ruhamah, which means the ones I love. I love. What a promise. All right. So let's look at this marriage for a little bit here. See what we can understand about this whole marriage relationship of Yah with his people, because this is what Hosea was having to live out in dramatic and probably very painful reality so that people could understand this concept of being married to an unfaithful woman, Yah divorcing that woman, yet bringing her back, which Torah says you can't do. So how does it happen? Okay. From the New Living Translation, Hosea 2:1, again, reading here, in that day you will call your brothers Ami, my people, and you will call your sisters Ruhamah, the ones I love. Okay, so I found something in a little book called The Principle of the Seed. I was wondering if I had it on my desk. I was going to show it to you. Oh, I don't see that one around. I probably have it by my bed. Because I've been reading. All right. But it's Brad Scott. It's called The Principle of the Seed. It's a great book. Wow. He's got a whole video, a CD series on it too. It's well worth, because the way he explains this is, if you want to understand everything, start with the principle of the seed, because it's in everything. Because think about how many times, and I'm going to go deeper into this when I do my next episode on chimeras. I did one last Friday and I'm getting the other one ready, but we're going to go deep into the principle of the seed, because understanding what's happening right now in the corruption of the seed and the chimeras coming on the scene, you've got to understand this principle. Everything revolves around the seed. everything. And we're going to go deep into it. All right. So the principle of the seed, this is verbatim of what Paul said in his writings. Hosea's story is a wife, not of his people, where children are born, then she is unfaithful. The son is called, the first son that's born is called Jezreel, which means Yah scatters. Okay. Yah scatters the seed. The daughter that is born is called Lu Ru'amah, no mercy. Romans 9, 10, and 11 shows us that it is not the children of flesh, but the children of promise are his people. Isaac was the child of promise when Abraham was 100 years old, right? So think about that parable, right? We've got a parable that says that when seed is scattered, some will produce 100-fold, some will produce 60-fold, some will produce 30-fold. What is that a connection to? Because everything in the New Testament assumes you already know all the stories of the Old Testament. You can't understand it correctly by itself if you don't know the stories, that it's a commentary on the Old Testament. And that's why we get craziness and doctrines all over the place that make no sense. And people come up with stuff that's just out in left field somewhere, because they're not understanding what the parables and the idioms are about. Right? You've got to have the foundation. When do you ever pick up a book and start in the middle? Start at the beginning so that you can understand what the whole thing means, right? It's just, we don't do that with any other novel we pick up. You don't start in the middle of the story, start at the beginning, right? So that you'll have the context. Okay, so this whole thing about this, I just wanted to share this one about the children of promise, right? And the seed being, that's exactly what it is, Lisa. It is precept upon precept. But I thought this was really cool. I was listening to Brad Scott teach about this, and because I had never understood it. I didn't know what that was about. Why was it some produce 100-fold? Why do some produce 60-fold? Why do some produce 30-fold? And here's how he explained it. Abraham was, the seed comes through Abraham for his people, right? And Abraham was 100 years old when he produced the seed of Isaac, and Isaac was born, right? When Isaac had his sons, Yaakov and Esau, he was 60 years old. Okay. Now the seed of promise then came through Jacob, was given to Joseph. Joseph was given the blessing of the firstborn. This is where the seed, was coming from for the blessing. And Joseph was a picture of someone that at 30 years old, he is called into service for his brothers and sisters. He's haven't had to give his life by, a prison sentence and time in a pit and, in a dungeon and, basically a death of losing his identity. And he comes back from that. And because of what he does at 30 years old, then a way for the entire household and all those in the nations who were willing to believe in Yahweh and come into covenant with him, makes a way for that to happen. And so then we've got the 30-fold. I thought that was really interesting, with understanding those numbers. And that was how Brad Scott was explaining it. So I just wanted to share that because I thought, wow, I'd never thought about that before. Okay. Yeah, I have too, Lisa. I've always wondered what those numbers mean. And that's the first thing I've ever heard to even begin to explain it in a way that I could understand, because it seems backwards. It seems like it would be 30, 60, and 100, right? But, like a progression. But when you understand with the fathers, and I believe it's in Malachi, when we're instructed, but that the children, and we're given the promise that the children's hearts will be turned to the fathers, right? We'll start looking towards our fathers and understanding those things. And our fathers of faith would be, Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, right? So I found that interesting. All right. So Hosea says in chapter 1, verse 10, says his people will be called B'nai Hai Elohim. And that is sons. It's plural, right? Sons living high. Okay. That's the word for life. And then God, Elohim, right? B'nai Ha Elohim. All right. So let's look at that some. This is really cool. I found this many, many years ago. It was back in 2003, 2004, right in that time period, when I was getting this download about the tribes being alive and well and in all the nations. And I was trying to wrap my brain around it because I had just come into, the understanding of Torah and the Shabbats and its importance and everything, after Yah awoke me while I was leading a play in front of a singing Christmas tree, right? So it was about 2 years into my new awakening and journey when I ran across this. I was getting all this stuff about the tribes and I didn't understand. And I was trying to understand this, this story in John 21 and the 153 fish and what in the world did that mean? And I happened to pick up E.W. Bullinger's book, Numbers in Scripture, which is just a fantastic reference. I used that in so many things that I did when I taught the entire, I used it in every class when I taught the Odiot at Sefer Academy, that class, because there's just so much significance that comes out of it. So anyway, when I looked up the number 153, he's got it as a B'nai. B'nai is a bet, a noon, and a yod. Now, in Hebrew, they don't have a separate number system. The letter system is the number system, and so everybody knows that this is how you count things up. So we've got bet, noon, yod. We've got a numerical value of 2 with the bet, a numerical value of 50 with the noon, of 10 with the yod. So it's not just that it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it goes up to 10 and then it starts in 20s, so it's really interesting how it goes with the value. Okay. Hey, so B'nai Ha, hey means the, right? So when it's standing by itself like that, or even sometimes as a prefix. Okay. So we've got B'nai, bet, noon, yod, hey, 2, 50, 10, and 5. And then we've got Elohim, which is Aleph with a value of 1, Lamed, a value of 30, hey, a value of 5, yod, a value of 10, and mem, a value of 40. All right. That adds up to 153. So like I'm saying, in the New Testament, assumes you understand what's in the Old Testament. So when the whole phrase B'nai Ha Elohim, or sons of the living God, is an idiom that it would spark, oh yeah, the whole number 153. People understood the gematria, right? They understood what that meant. And so they understood that it spelled this out. So a lot of things that are so foreign to us were clearly understood in times past. So I love this story in John 21, 3 through 6. Shimon, and it's so funny here to see that, many scholars consider Hosea and John with the same prophetic call, and yet they've got the exact same message with the 153 fish and the B'nai Ha-Elohim in their messages, right? They were both speaking the exact same thing. So John 21, 3-6 says, Shimon Kepha said unto them, I go fishing, right? So what's happened in Shimon Kepha's life? Now, for everybody who doesn't know the Hebrew, that is Simon Peter, right? So what's happened to this fisherman Peter that was such a leader? Well, what's happened to him is every disciple thought that Yahusha was going to defeat the Romans and free them from oppression. And it didn't happen. And instead, their leader, the one that they were following, is slaughtered like a lamb, like a Passover lamb, like a helpless being, right? And he was the one who had power to raise the dead and heal the sick and confront the Pharisees and Sadducees of the day and confront things that were out of order and release people from demonic spirits. And then they just watch him taken, and he opens not his mouth, and he doesn't defend himself, and he allows himself to just be crucified. Hello, Carrie. Glad you could join us. Right? And so Peter's mind had to have just been like, I don't understand anything anymore. So forget it. I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to go forward. My every bit of my theology has been blown. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to go back to what I used to do. I'm just going to go fishing. Forget it. And he was a leader of men, right? He was a real man's man, the kind of man that other men are good with following his lead, right? That was just the type of man Peter was, right? So they said to him, well, we'll go with you, right? If you're going back to fishing, I guess that's what we'll all do, right? So they went forth and they entered into a ship immediately. And that night they caught nothing, right? In their own effort, they did nothing. During the blackest part, their souls were oppressed, their minds were oppressed. Nothing looked like what it should. It's just dark, right? It's just dark all around, right? But when the morning was now come, right? Here comes the sun rising up, right? Yahusha stood on the shore. But the Talmudim knew not that it was Yahusha. They didn't recognize him at that point. Then Yahusha said unto them, children, have you any meat? They answered him, no, right? He's like, yeah, well, we've fished all night. We haven't caught anything. And he said unto them, cast the net. Now, we've already heard in other parables, right, that the kingdom of Yah is like a net, right? He said to them, cast the net on the right side of the ship. And now they were not able to draw it for the multitude of fish. Therefore, the Talmudim, whom Yahusha loved, said unto Kepha, so this was John, said unto Peter, it's Adonai. Now, when Shimon Kepha heard that it was Adonai, he girt his fisher's coat unto him, for he was naked, and he did cast himself into the sea. And the other Talmudim came in a little ship, for they were not far from land, but as it were 200 cubits, dragging the net with fish. As soon then as they were come to land, they saw a fire of coals, and fish were laid out in bread. Yahusha said unto them, bring of the fish which you have now caught. Shimon Kepha went up and drew the net to land full of great fish, 153. And for all there were so many, yet was not the net broken, right? The kingdom of heaven has room for all, okay? So in John 21, when there are 153 fish in the net, Yahusha is reminding his disciples of their job description, right? He had told them before, and we saw it in Matthew 4:18 through 19. And walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." That was from the King James Version. All right. Some of this I've pulled from other studies I've done long ago, and I use so many versions of scripture. I mean, I'll show you here. Half the time I'm looking at this one. This is an entire Bible in the Hebrew, right? So that I can look it up and try to verify what it is I'm trying to bring in my teaching. So you'll see me use all kinds of translations. Okay. So then in Matthew 10, verses 5 through 8, these 12 Yahusha sent out after instructing them, saying, "Do not go in the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter any city of the Samaritans, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Yasharel. As you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. Freely you have received, so freely I want you to give." This was their instructions. This is their job description. I love this. I'm going to read it out of the Sefer. It's in Matthew 13:47 through 50. It says, "Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that was cast into the sea and gathered of every kind, which when it was full," and look at that, of every kind. It was just, the sea is full of the multitudes, right? It is an idiom for the multitudes of humanity that are in the nations. The kingdom is compared to a net that's cast out, right? Which when it was full, when it's reached its fullness, and no one knows when that is except Yahweh. He knows, right? And when it was full, they drew it to shore. They sat down and gathered the good into vessels, but they cast the bad away, right? And he was saying, like, when in other places in scripture, it says it's full of every kind. It means there were some that were long, there were some that were fat, there were some that were spotted, there were some that were striped, there were some solid colors, some started out blue and fades to yellow, some have a tail that fans like this, some have a round bottle, some only have their eye on one side, every kind of fish, every kind. Why? Because they're out of every nation. Because yellow, red, black, and white, they are all precious in his sight, right? This is not about a bloodline. It's about a heart line. It's always been about a heart line. Okay? He can tell us. He will tell us which tribe we belong to. And it's interesting, those when we develop in our prophetic gifts and know kind of who we are, and we do find our tribe and find who we click with and who we work best with, and it's designed that way, right? But the kingdom is for all, and all the gifts matter, and all the nations matter, and all the people groups matter, right? It's not just one. It's those who have a heart that they want to give to him, to say, "Please be enthroned upon my heart. Search me, know me. If there be any wicked way within me, shine your light on it so that I can get rid of it and follow in purity of my heart after you, Yah, and do your will upon this earth, so that I can be in eternal relationship with you. It's not that our works accomplish anything, but I'll show you my faith by my works, by what my choices are. I show you who my heart belongs to. It's not that my work saved me. He did what was necessary on the cross to save me. And how appropriate that we're getting ready to celebrate Passover. You know, no matter what calendar you're on, whether you're looking at first Passover, second Passover, whether you did it a month ago when it looked like the barley was in Aviv, or whether you're on a more traditional calendar, we're in this season. Right? I'm getting ready to celebrate with the whole group on Wednesday evening. You know, that's where we're at, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to honor Yah to the best of our ability, right? And I can't wait till he comes and he straightens us all out and tells us what his calendar is, because he's probably going to say, you were wrong, and you were wrong, and you were wrong, and you were wrong. And let me show you how we're going to do this. And I'm good with that, right? But let's read this again, okay? Because I kind of got off on a rabbit trail. Oh, I love this, Lisa. So before I reread this, let me show Lisa's comment. She says, loving this, Chelle, really thinking now about the net the disciples left behind, the secure net that held the 153 fish. Yeah, very interesting. You'll have to share with us your insights when we go further into more teachings. I love that. And I should put this on here. You know, you guys, anytime you want to send me an email, or, you know, if you want to follow what I'm doing on Telegram, I do have a Telegram account. It's just a channel to where I add things, because right now I don't have anybody who could help me with monitoring it. And so I can't do one where people really are interacting, because I can't do a good job of monitoring it myself. But always feel free to send me an email, or, you know, keep up with me on Telegram and different things. I try to announce my shows when I remember. I'm not good at all that kind of stuff. So I don't even know if I ever put an announcement on my own Telegram channel that I was doing a show today. It's just not my forte. All right. So let me read this again. Matthew 13:47-50. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that was cast into the sea and gathered of every kind, which when it was full, they drew to shore and sat down and gathered the good into vessels, but cast the bad away. So shall it be at the end of the world. All right. The angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just. It's the same thing as the wheat and the tares. And both times we're told that what happens, the wicked are what's dealt with first, right? They are gotten rid of first. The angels come and they get rid of the tares first. The angels come and they sever the wicked from among the just, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. So it's not our job either. You know, we do have to be gatekeepers. We can't allow, you know, somebody that we know is coming in just to wreak havoc in things that we're doing, right? But I can't accurately judge someone to hell, right? I don't know what that person's final state is. I'm not one of the angels that gets to separate the good from the bad. I don't have that kind of insight. I can't see into the supernatural realm unless for a brief moment Yah opens my understanding up into something, which has happened a few times. Right? It happens to me occasionally where he allows that veil to get very thin and for me to be able to perceive things in the supernatural realm. Right? But most of the time I'm walking around figuring out, I've got to get my husband's laundry ready, and I've got to figure out what we're eating for dinner, and, you know, what am I going to do with the children's class at our community, and how can I, you know, what am I cooking, and just normal, just life, you know, and so I don't have that ability to look at someone and decide, oh, well, they're beyond redemption. They are beyond deliverance. They are beyond help, you know? So I just have to stay prayerful and ask what Yah would have me to do and use some discernment, right? But not go into a level of I've got the right of judgment, because I'm not that smart. And neither is any other human. All right. So back to Hosea's marriage. So Hosea 2:23 says, and I will sow her unto me in the earth, and I will have mercy upon her that had not obtained mercy. And I will say to them which were not my people, you are my people, and they shall say, you are my Elohim. What an amazing story. What an amazing story this is. Yah scatters his seed, right? He sows into the earth. So Hosea 3:1, then said Yahweh unto me, go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet a woman who breaks wedlock, according to the love of Yahweh toward the children of Yasharel, who look to other him and love flagons of wine. Now, this became very, very, very interesting to me because I started digging into the Hebrew here. And this is where I had to get out my total Hebrew scriptures and look it up on eSword to the Old Testament Hebrew just to verify that I was seeing what I was seeing. All right. So this verse, go yet love a woman beloved of her friend. So I looked it up, and this phrase, her friend, okay? Her friend, the word that is there, now Strong's has coded it to add a yod on the end, but in the original Hebrew, it does not have a yod on the end. Okay. And her, you can see it's italicized, meaning the translators decided, hey, it'll make more sense if we insert the word her here. Okay. That's how this works. So pay attention if something's italicized. This is commentary that's been inserted into scripture. Okay. So go love a woman who desires raw is what it says. Raw. That's the word for evil. Right? That is the word for evil. There's a mind with the evil eye. There's, there's plans, a prince of the eye, the all-seeing eye in Egypt. Okay? It's raw, it's evil. Go yet love a woman beloved of evil, and that beloved just means who loves. This woman who loves evil, yet a woman who breaks wedlock. Okay, so this woman breaks wedlock. When we look at the commandments, the 10 commandments in the chiastic pattern, which I'm going to show you in a second, it lines up with being a Sabbath breaker. I like to think there's many, many things in scripture that give us the heart of the matter and are done in a chiastic pattern. So you can see what it's leading to, but you can see what corresponds to what, right? The menorah is like that. The feast is like that. There's too many to even think about. Oh, very cool, Bethany. You'll have to send me that article. I would love to see that too. Awesome. Okay. Sorry, getting distracted. All right. So this woman breaks wedlock. And so I'm going to look at the chiastic pattern. So he's telling Hosea, love this woman with the same love that Yahweh has towards Yasharel, even though they have been unfaithful and they love their raisin cakes and wine. These were offerings given to idols. Okay. All right. So, this article that Bethany, if it's okay with Bethany, she can let me know in an email. But if it's okay with you, then I will make sure we can maybe turn it into a PDF, and I could put it on the Telegram channel so that everybody could see it. Okay. So I wanted to show you, and Bethany, you can just email with me about that privately or send me a private message, however you want to do it. So let's look at this chiastic pattern, okay, of the 10 commandments and see what we can see here. Okay. So I've laid out the 10 commandments 1 through 10 in the chiastic pattern. So he's saying in the very first commandment, you are to have no other Elohim, right? And what lines up with that is no coveting. Now look at that. Why did Hua, okay, Eve, fall in the first place? This fruit was dangled before her and said, Yah is trying to keep something from you. But if you eat of this, you will now have the same knowledge that we have, right? And this was a fallen watcher, a rebellious angelic being, okay? So what was dangled before her was knowledge. And what did she do? She coveted it. She wanted it, right? So you can see right there, we're not to have other Elohim. And if we won't worship other Elohim, and that should probably be done with a little e, right? Because none is as great as the Most High. The Most High is the creator of all, right? He created all of the other ones, right? So no other Elohim, because when we don't honor them, we're not, that covetousness is not coming forth out of us wanting what they could give us instead of what Yah has so graciously already given us. Being happy with who we are, being willing to bloom where he's planted us, right? All this coveting, it's jealousy, it's envy, it's wickedness. It's wanting something that he hasn't determined is best for us. There it is, right there. So then he says, and don't have any graven images. Don't put these things up. And it goes with being a false witness, right? Because to be a true witness is to witness of the truth. And he is the truth. And he's the only one that we're to be exalting, right? But if we allow these idols and these images to put up, our witness becomes a false witness. Think about it with Solomon. He had been given so much, and yet, and it was on display with the temple. Yet the message was totally diluted because he built temples for the 1,000 of his wives' gods all throughout the lands. And because of this, his witness became a false witness, right? Okay, so we are not, he tells us to, don't blaspheme his name, right? Don't perforate it and puncture it, because that's what blaspheme means. Don't strike through it, right? And so it's been interesting, even the studies that I had done with Dr. Pigeon, where we're talking about how if you're reading along in the Hebrew, and it clearly says Yod Hey Vav Hey, but yet your religion demands that you don't say that, and with your eyes you slash it right out of the text and you say the word Hashem instead of the word Yahweh, aren't you stealing his name? The power's in his name, right? You're puncturing, you're perforating it, right? So, okay, great. So I will be putting it up on the Telegram channel for everybody, this article that Bethany has for us. Okay, so we're not to blaspheme his name because we're stealing the power of his name before others, right? It's a theft to do that. I found that very interesting. When we guard, okay, and honor the Shabbat, we are showing our commitment to the wedding covenant week after week after week, right? We're showing that we're rehearsing that wedding covenant every week to where we are resting with him. We're showing ourselves to be faithful wives, a faithful bride, right? Keeping that garment clean, right? And when we honor our mother and father, and I know this is so difficult, especially in this day and age, and it's taken me a lot to wrap my brain around it too, because people who have listened to my story know that I didn't have an easy story in life. And to get to this place of honoring my father and my mother, well, what happened when my mother and my father came together? My life came into being. Without the union of my mother and my father coming together and sparking my life between the sperm and the egg, right? And then Yah knitting me together in my mother's womb, right? I would not exist. And so to be grateful for that, to be grateful that I have life, is to not murder my purpose and existence, to say I'm grateful for the mother and father that came together and sparked life. And I honor that. Means, I don't nullify my own existence in life. So I know we could go deeper in that, and there's a lot in that, and we should probably do a whole series on just this chiastic pattern. But I find it very interesting. It also follows a cycle. When we look at chiastic patterns, we've got a waxing to the fullness, and then a waning, and then a waxing to the fullness and a waning, right? Like the moon pattern, we've got a cycle, right? Interesting when we start looking at things like that. The book of John has tons of chiastic patterns. If y'all find that interesting, let me know, and maybe we'll do some of those chiastic patterns. All right. Back to Hosea. Hosea 3, 2-4. I brought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for a homer of barley, and a half homer of barley. And I said unto her, you shall abide for me many days, and you shall not play the harlot, and you shall not be for another man. So will I also be for you. For the children of Yasharel shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without the teraphim. He's like, I'm going to take all these things away from you, right? The teraphim is the family household gods, right? This is where the whole concept, they were literally shrunken heads, okay? This is where jack-o'-lanterns come from. This word return means shuv. It's teshuvah. It's repentance. It means go back to the place where you departed from the path. You know, there's two different things as we're out fishing for men to keep in mind. Some people that we are fishing for already know Yah, but something's happened in their life to cause them to depart from the path. And we're trying to help them get back on the path, right? Others, this is a brand new experience. And so we're trying to present to them the hope of trusting in Messiah, the hope of eternal life, right? So there's, you know, it takes some discernment when we're out fishing, right? Of what's the right bait, right? And so we need to pray. I find this interesting. I was telling a story to my community on Shabbat, something that happened to me a few years ago. And I'll just remove this for a minute so I can tell you guys this story. It was really interesting. So I used to deal a lot in vintage jewelry. Robert was an auctioneer and I had a huge site on Etsy and I dealt in all this. It took up all my time and y'all removed me from doing that because he wanted me doing what I'm doing now, right? But at that time, I had been given a gift by another vintage jewelry dealer of these earrings. They were probably this long. They were early 1970s cloisonne parrots. They were so cute, right? They were just flashy and cute as they could be. And they were given to me as a gift, right? And I really liked them. I enjoyed wearing them. And one day I was putting on my jewelry. And this is right as Yah was calling me out of all the vintage jewelry stuff and wanting to get me more on the path of what I'm doing now. And so he speaks to me and I feel, you know, when Yah speaks to me, it's not like I hear a huge voice booming from the heavens. I get an impression, you know, my sheep know my voice and they will not follow after another. So I know the voice of my shepherd, right? You know, it's so interesting. He's the Lamb of Yah, yet he's the shepherd. He's the good seed that's been scattered, and he's the one who scatters, right? He's the Father and he's the Son. You know, it's just so interesting, right? I love this. Yahweh means Yah's breath, right? We breathe, and I always give him thanks for that. I do too, Bethany. I do too. I wake up and I say thank you for restoring me, for keeping me hidden underneath the shadow of your wings, and allowing me to have your breath in my lungs today. Yeah, that's just kind of what my prayers when I wake up. So anyway, back to the story of these parrot earrings. So I hear him tell me, you're going to meet a woman that is absolutely goes gaga over these earrings. She's going to be like, "Ooh, those are just so pretty." Da, 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 da. She's just going to go on and on, right? You're going to know her by her reaction to these earrings. He said, and when you meet her, I want you to give her this pair of earrings. And then I want you to say to her what I tell you to say to her. And I'm like, okay. So I wore these earrings every day for like 3 weeks, waiting for this to happen because I knew I'd heard him tell me this. And so everywhere I went, if I left my house, I had those earrings on, right? And finally, Robert and I are on an appointment in a different city. And, you know, we've been to our appointment and we're hungry and we need to get lunch. And we stop at this restaurant to get lunch. And I haven't told him or anybody, you know, about why I'm wearing these earrings every single day, right? And so we come up to, it's like this place where it's you order what you want behind the counter. They give it to you. It was sort of cafeteria style, but then, and so anyway, we're at the counter and the woman is there. The woman behind the counter who's getting our food is the one, and she's the one going nuts over these earrings. And I'm like, oh, this is her. This is her. Right? I've been waiting. And so I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I'm standing in this huge line of people. She's even too far for me to reach over. Plus, she's got her serve, gloves on for serving. I'm like, and I hear y'all just going, just wait. I'll give you the timing. I'll give you the timing. Just wait. So there was something that one of us, either Robert or I, probably me, had ordered that was a little weird and needed to be prepared in a special way. And so they had to bring it out separately. So they said, it's okay. We'll have someone bring it to your table. Well, of course, it's the woman, right, who brings it to my table. So then I know, okay. So I've already taken the earrings off, and I've got them sitting there because I see her coming. And I said, I want you to have these. These are a gift. And she, oh, no. I said, no. And then I heard what y'all wanted me to say. He said, tell her I love her and I want her to come back to me. And so I give her the earrings and I said, Yah wants you to know. And of course, I used the word God because she wasn't going to understand maybe who I was referring to, but he knows. And so we've got to be sensitive to that, even with our words and how we speak to people, and not get too hung up on what we know out of the Hebrew, right? It doesn't matter. Do what Yah's telling you to do. Say what Yah's telling you to say and how he's telling you to say it. Right. So I said, God wanted me to give you these earrings. And what I heard myself say was, he wants you to know that he loves you and he misses you. And he would like for you to begin to talk to him again. And she begins to cry. Right. And she said, I've been really mad at God because my friend died and I didn't understand why. And I said, yeah, I understand that. There's a lot of things that happen that we don't have the answers to, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't love you, and he loves you and he wants you to spend time with him again. So please go back to him. But that was just one of those things, right? It's some people have walked away. Other people are agnostic. They've never believed, they don't want anything, and they don't have that hope. Others have lost their way. They've departed from the path. And so I just wanted to tell you guys that, to just be sensitive as you're out and about, what y'all has you do, and ask, what the situation is with who you may be dealing with. Okay. All right. Let me add this back to this screen. Right. Yeah, it was very memorable, Lisa. It really was. I came home. I was so excited. I was like, what pair do you want me to give away next? Right. And I heard nothing, because it wasn't time. I mean, everything, it's all about him. It's all about his timing and what he wants to do, but it's really fun when he uses me in that way to touch somebody. That's always just very exciting to me. Okay. So then I wanted to look here a little bit at some idioms, right? So Hebrew idioms. Hosea 3:5 says, afterward shall the children of Yasharel return and seek Yahweh Elohiym and David their king, and shall fear El Yahweh and his goodness in the latter days. So it's talking about the latter days experience, right? The time of the very end. Okay. Oh, that's very sweet, Lisa. She's saying, what a gift you were given in return from Abba. Well, thank you so much. He has given me many, many gifts. I'm very, very blessed. It's just unbelievable how he blesses me in so many ways. He'll do special things for me, even when my heart is hurting or I'm sad, or things have happened. It's very interesting that you say that, because I've really struggled this last couple of months. Anybody who follows my ministry knows that there was quite a situation, and it's been very difficult for me. Very difficult. My heart was just felt shattered, and it's so funny because in the process, Yah has done so many things to bless me and to open up things, and I mean, literally make things new in my life. right? I mean, just in innumerable ways. He's given me, he's like, it's okay, like, keep your hands open. I'll put things in, I'll take things out, but I'll bless you and I'll help you. And he's been doing that for me over this last couple of months as I process things and get my heart healed because that's what has to happen sometimes when very difficult things happen. And so he's been healing my heart, which is why I haven't done as many videos, because it takes time. It takes time when things have hurt very, very bad. And but he is so faithful. He's so good. He's so good. And he's shown me in a million ways that he's got new things for me to do, right? And I'm really excited about that. Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. So let's get back to Hosea 3:5. Afterward shall the children of Yasharel return. Here's our promise, right? After being scattered into the nations, he's going to regather, and they will seek Yahweh Elohiym. And he's talking about this long timeline, right? Of his people. This is part of our story. And they will seek Yahweh Elohiym and David their king. Well, David had died long before this was written, so he's not talking about David, right? He's talking about the descendant of David, Yahusha, right? Who is our eternal and everlasting king. And they shall fear El Yahweh and his goodness in the latter days. Right? So this was out of the Sefer. Now I wanted to read this also out of the New Living Translation because I want to zero in on something here. In the New Living Translation, it says, but afterward the people will return and devote themselves to Yahweh, their Elohim, and to David's descendant, their king. In the last days, they will tremble in awe of Yahweh and of his goodness. So I'm looking at this phrase, right? Last days, latter days. And I wanted to look at the literal Strong's numbers in here. Okay. So when we look this up, it is the Strong's numbers for latter is H319 and days is H3117. Now, this is how idioms work. Okay, this is the same verbiage that's used in Genesis 49:1. So this is an idiom that people who are familiar with the text, automatically their mind goes back when they see this last days, latter days. Where does our mind go? It goes back to the Torah portion where Genesis 49:1 is, where Yaakov called unto all his sons, all 12, and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. It's literally akarit hayamim, right? It's the very end of the time, as you have experienced time, when I'm getting ready to wrap this thing up, right? So we know out of the beginning, what does he do? He blesses the tribe with their individual tribal assignments, the prophecies that fit their particular group, their particular family, their particular tribe, and how it all works together. And he says, gather together, right? Come up out of the nations where you've been scattered, gather back together. I'm going to show you what your function and purpose is to be and how you're to operate one to another so that you are a well-functioning body, right? That works correctly together, all of you. And you're going to come up out of the nations. So we can see it. We see it in the story of the New Testament, right? With the fish in the net and gathering. We see it in Genesis. We see it in Hosea. So this is a thread that goes through all of Scripture. Absolutely amazing how he does that and puts it together for us. Now let's look at a passage out of the King James Version. I know this is long. Thank you for sticking with me, because I know this is a long teaching. I try to tell myself to keep things to like 20 minutes to keep people's attention, but I don't know how to do it, apparently. So Numbers 24, reading 14 through 19. And this time I'm using the King James Version. So, and now behold, I go unto my people, come therefore, and I will advertise thee what this people shall do, and thy people in the latter days, in the Akarit Hayamim. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam, the son of Beor, hath said, and the man whose eyes are open hath said, he has said, which heard the words of Elohim and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open, right? He's having a supernatural experience. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Yasharel, and shall smite the corners of Moab and destroy all the children of Seth. So what does he see? He sees the evil, the tares, the wicked, the right being dealt with first. Okay, he sees this. And Edom shall be a possession. Seir shall also be a possession for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. And out of Yaakov shall come he that shall have dominion, and shall destroy him that remaineth of the city. So he sees the prince, he sees Yahusha. Okay. And when he looked on Amalek, all right, one of the tribes of the giants, okay. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. Right? This is the nation, a people of the fallen watchers, bred by the fallen watchers. This is a bad seed. Okay. All right. This is, Yahusha scatters his seed, and what comes up in it is wheat and tares. And he's asked, didn't you sow good seed in your field? And he said, yes, but an enemy also came and sowed seed, right? How did that happen? Adam was charged to guard, right? But he didn't guard it, and an enemy came in. Okay. All right. So let's keep looking. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. And he looked on the Kenites and took up his parable and said, strong is thy dwelling place, and thou puttest thy nest in a rock. Nevertheless, the Kenites shall be wasted until Ashur shall carry thee away captive. Remember too how it says in the New Testament, they're going to hide themselves in the rocks, hoping that y'all won't see them? Right there. Right? Putting thy nest in a rock. Dumbs, deep underground military bases. All right. And he took up his parable and said, alas, who shall live when Elohim does this? He's like, who's going to survive it? Right? And this is Balaam seeing this happen. And ships shall come from the coast of Hittim, and shall afflict Ashur, and shall afflict Eber. And he also, and where is Eber? It is like the Iberian Peninsula. It's a Hebrew name where most of the northern tribes went before they were taken over by Assyria and captured. Okay. We'll get into more of that study too as we go, right? And ships shall come from the coast of Hittim, and shall afflict Ashur, and shall afflict Eber, and he also shall perish forever. And Balaam rose up and went and returned to his place, and Balak also went his way. And he was seeing a vision of the very end times. Very interesting. Okay, so now let's connect this to Acts chapter 2, verses 15 through 21. For these are not drunken as you suppose, seeing it is but at the third hour of the day. But this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. And it shall come to pass in the last days, the Akarit Hayamim. These are all things that we can expect to take place in the last days, right? And the last days period really is, Shavuot was fulfilled. This is where we're looking at a part of a fulfillment. I believe there's full fulfillments of all the feasts still coming, but we see a huge fulfillment in Acts 2 of Shavuot, right? Where the Ruach is given as a gift to his people, right? And then we're really waiting to see the manifestation of the fulfillment of the final tribe. So when we're dealing of the final feast, the last three. So when we're dealing with the Shamash candle and Shavuot, right? The middle, and everything that comes after that, we're looking at the latter days. Okay. So we're looking at this latter days time period. Okay. So for these are not drunken as you suppose, seeing it is but the third hour of the day. But this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. And it shall come to pass in the Akarit Hayamim, saith Elohim, I will pour out my Ruach upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in those days of my Ruach, my breath in them, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in the heaven above and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before that great and notable day of Yahweh come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of Yahweh shall be saved. Right? Beautiful. These are the things that we can expect to see happening in the day that we are living in. Here's another one where he's talking about expect this to be taking place in the latter days. It comes out of 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 9. This know also that in the Akarit Hayamim, in the last days, perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, right? We live in a selfie generation, right? My TikTok videos and my this and my that. It is a selfie generation. Covetous, right? He with the most toys, he who dies with the most toys wins? I don't think so. Boasters, right? Wow. I'm this and I'm that. And I mean, wow. Proud, so proud. Blasphemers, those who would just destroy the name of Yah, just puncture it, perforate it, stomp it underfoot. Disobedient to parents, unthankful for the blessings that they've been given, as if it's their right. Unholy, refusing to be set apart from the things of this world. Without natural affection, like something has turned it off. Well, I can marry my computer. I can, why do I need to go find a wife? This robot will do just fine. This is not natural affection, right? It's not. Truce breakers. I'm your friend today, tomorrow I'm not. False accusers, those who just, they lie for their own benefit. They have no problem with a spirit of lying. Incontinent, fierce, when you've got that robotic mentality, the super soldier mentality, fierce, despisers of those that are good. I mean, look at the rhetoric going on today with those that, if you have biblical beliefs, that you're despised, you're just hated for them. Traitors, those who are just traitorous, heady, high-minded, they think so much of themselves, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of Elohim, right? I'd rather have my comfort than, it's like, okay, when y'all whispered to me, those pair of earrings were my favorite pair of earrings. I mean, I enjoyed them. They were my favorite pair, right? Lovers of pleasure. I took pleasure in wearing those earrings. They matched so many things. I got so many compliments. But there's nothing that I love more than Yah. Nothing. There's nothing that I have. He can have anything I have. Robert and I both feel that way. He can have anything we have, because there's nothing more pleasurable to me than bringing him joy through obedience, right? The joy of Yah is my strength. What makes him happy is it's what makes any parent happy, when their children listen to them and do what they're being told to do. Why? Because we trust him and we believe him, right? Had I disobeyed, those earrings that were so fun to me to wear would have been a prick in my side every time I put them on, because I would have known that I was disobedient. Why? Because I loved having the pleasure of those earrings more than loved Elohim. I'm so glad I did what he told me to do for my own soul. I'm glad I did what he told me to do, right? Lovers of pleasure more than lovers of Elohim, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. It means we're going to have this going on all over in religious systems. We're going to have wicked servants. We're going to have those who are not who we think they are, right? For this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with diverse lust, ever learning, right? They can have so much scriptural knowledge, okay, but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. That's that da'at, right? That knowledge of it's yada, relationship with him, of knowing him. Like you get to know your husband. I mean, Robert is a very picky eater, and there's good reasons for it, but I love him. I am connected to him. So it's my mission to constantly try to come up with dishes that I think he might like, because I love him and I want to please him. And it's the same thing with Yah. It's yada. It's connected, right? Now, as Janes and Jambres withstood Moses, right? They were in the household of faith. They were there. They were considered servants of Yah, and they were withstanding Moses. So do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds reprobate concerning the faith, but they shall proceed no further, for their folly shall be manifest unto all men, as theirs also was. Right? Yeah, I love y'all's comments. Oh, isn't that a good one? Bethany is sharing that. Let me get it over there. I'm trying to dry my mouth. Bethany is sharing Psalm 91 is a prophecy of the day Yah returns, and it needs to be understood. Absolutely. It's when I read so often, and you're right, there are so many prophetic implications in that we can see this day that we are living in, and what we need, to be hidden underneath the shadow of his wing. And then Lisa was saying that I traded those earrings for a greater joy. I did, because you know what? I get more joy now from the story and the memory of what happened than I ever got from just wearing them. You know, it's much more pleasurable to me to have had the experience, you know. Okay, here's another one. Hebrews 1:1 and 2 says, Elohim, who at sundry times, right, means at various times, and in diverse manners spoke in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds, right? Amazing. I love this. Bethany says, yeah, yay, Chelle. I watched a video of a guy in love with his car and kissing it like crazy. And this is the madness. It is, Bethany. It's total madness, right? I mean, of those who don't know Yah. Yeah, they are fooled by things that are just going to rust and decay and fall away. And, you know, that car can get in an accident. A tree can fall on it, you know. You just got to do the payments. It's amazing, right? All right, here's another one out of 2 Peter 3, starting in verse 1, going through 8. It says, this second epistle, beloved, I now write unto you, in both which I stir up your pure minds by way of remembrance, that ye may be mindful of the words which were spoken before by the holy prophets, and of the commandment of us as the apostles of Yahweh and Savior, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days, in the Akarit Hayamim, scoffers, walking after their own lust and saying, where is the promise of his coming? You know how many times I've heard people say that? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of Elohim, the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. But the heavens and the earth, which are now by the same word, are kept in store, reserved unto fire, against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But, beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with Yahweh as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. He gives us this same time frame in Ecclesiastes. We see it in the menorah pattern. We see it in the feast pattern of sevens. We see it in the weekly Shabbat. You know, we see it in how he created the world in 7 days. We see this over and over, so we can know that we're in the time frame. I don't know the hour. I don't know the day. You know, I don't know the year. I don't know those things, but I know that we're in the time frame, and I am constantly blown away. The fact that when he created me and you, right? And I'm going to remove this for a minute because I want to tell y'all this. When he created us, I mean, he could have had us born at any time. But when he knit us together in our mother's womb, he went, this one is made for a day like this, for the Akarit Hayamim. I can trust this one with the treasure of who I am in the day, in this cataclysmic day when people have lost their minds and selfishness just runs rampant. I can trust this one. This one was born for this. You were born for this. Don't be swayed off of it. Don't think that it's an accident that you are here. Don't think it's an accident that you're hearing the words of my voice right now. Whether you're listening live or listening in the future, this message is for you. You were born for this. It's not a mistake. And you have a job to do. Press into Yah and find out what that is on a day-by-day basis, and take joy in it, and rejoice in the fact that he found you worthy and created you with everything you need to be in this day. We're at the cusp of things we've never experienced before. And it's going to be wild. It's going to be hard. And people are going to be looking for answers. And you were born for this. All right. And that was the end of my presentation anyway. All right. Well, what a great way to end. And I hope this has been a blessing to you. And I hope that you really hear Yah's message for you within this message. I love you guys. I hope you have a wonderful Passover. I really don't know which videos I'm doing yet, when or how. I'll try to put it on my Telegram when I remember. All right. And I'll try to announce it ahead of time. But I really appreciate all of you being here with me. It means the world to me. You know, I love it. I love the fellowship. I love your encouragement. I couldn't have more wonderful people here with me today. You're each a treasure and a blessing. And thank you for participating in all your beautiful comments. Thank you so much. All right. Love you guys. Shalom. Have a wonderful day.
Day and night and day, the living creatures give their praise to him who lives eternally. They never cease from saying, Holy, holy is Yahweh.